the value of having decommodified housing that's rooted in gender, racial, and indigenous justice would require that we start to unpack some very ugly truths about our economy. In this country, 20% of our gross domestic product is housing related. It's all about the housing economy. From mortgages to developing, building these homes, we're all very much, and even our retirement, our 401ks, we're all very much implicated in holding up this speculative investment in land and housing. One of the first steps would be that we again acknowledge the extent to which we are all invested in this project of holding up property rights through private ownership. That would then require us to pressure our national and local officials on redirecting our financial resources to actually invest in the things that we value, which are cooperatives, investing in a responsive state that actually plays a redistributive role as opposed to the role that it plays now, which essentially subsidizes capital accumulation. At 1DC, one of the things that we deeply invest in is making sure that we expand and preserve deeply affordable housing. We can talk more about the financing and how that actually hinders the financing. And then also we would need to invest in shifting the financial structure over time, and this will be generations, to get us away from this speculative investment in debt and housing. Then we would also have to think about how we're going to build up our alternative institutions. One of the biggest historical weaknesses is that we've had great historical examples of co-ops, but one of the hardest things about sustaining co-ops is having the infrastructure, both the educational apparatus, but then also the financial apparatus to sustain these cooperatives when leadership transitions or when external forces, because this country is so deeply invested in private ownership that's oriented towards profit accumulation, you'll have constant external attacks on these cooperatives. The last big thing about that infrastructure and establishing a working class infrastructure oriented towards cooperatives is also unpacking and developing more popular means of educating the entire American society on how we need to actually disinvest from ideas of homeownership being the ideal form of actually getting included in American, quote unquote, democratic capitalism. That would mean going and challenging those ideas about homeownership, which are very much related on this idea that there's a hierarchy of stewardship or ownership, which means that would mean going at our wealth generation strategies. For the last 50 or so years in this post-civil rights era, we've had more access to these markets in terms of the homeownership markets than we have many, many more Black entrepreneurs who are using access to debt and ownership of homes as a way for them to generate their wealth origin on the backs of many of us, many other working class folks. We would need to challenge this investor strategy, even amongst our own. And the last thing is developing a commitment to acknowledging the extent to which we're all invested in it and being honest about how we can support each other, because this isn't about shaming. We all have it. I have a retirement account as well, 401k as well. So we need to think through ways we can talk to each other about ways that we ourselves are actually investing in alternatives, whether that be cooperatives, credit unions, things of that sort. Alternative institutions that actually are invested in cooperative stewardship over land and housing.